Hello, wanderer of the night. You have returned once again to the quiet edges of time. Beyond the sound of the world, beyond the glow of your restless thoughts, lies a place where silence still remembers the voices of the divine. Close your eyes and drift to the land of endless sand and shining stars, to Egypt, where gods walked in shadow and queens ruled not only men, but the very fabric of life itself. Tonight, we journey through the goddesses of Egypt, the mothers of magic, the guardians of life and death, and the keepers of the eternal order. Their stories were whispered in temple halls, carved on stone walls, and carried through the ages by the wind of the Nile. Each goddess was a reflection of something human: love, anger, wisdom, sorrow, and together they formed the heart of Egypt's soul. You will meet Isis, the mother who defied death for love; Hathor, the golden queen of joy whose laughter echoed through creation; Sekhmet, the lioness of wrath, whose breath was the desert's fire; Nut, the sky herself, who cradled the stars and swallowed the sun; Nephthys, the silent comforter of the dead; Mat, the feather of truth that balanced all things; and many others, forgotten by time, yet alive in every grain of sand that still glows beneath the moon. These are not just tales of gods. They are the oldest stories of womanhood, of creation and destruction, of nurturing and vengeance, of love so deep it could remake the world. So rest your thoughts. Let the weight of the day fall away. For the next 2 hours, you will wander through the divine history of the Nile, where eternity was written not in stone, but in the hearts of goddesses. And now we begin. Before there was Egypt, before there was land or sky or even time, there was only none, the endless ocean of nothingness. It was neither dark nor light, neither warm nor cold. It simply was, a stillness so deep that even silence bowed to it. Within this infinite sea, the seed of creation slept, waiting for the first heartbeat of existence. From that slumber rose Adam, the self-born god, emerging from the waters upon a sacred mound. He was the first thought, the first act, the whisper that said, "Let there be more than this." From his breath came Shu, the air that fills every space, and from his tears came Tefnut, the goddess of moisture, the first woman of creation. She was not yet worshipped in temples or sung to by priests. She was the unseen mist that rose with the dawn, the softness in the air that caressed the newborn earth. Where Adam represented will and action, Tefnut embodied compassion and balance, the tender force that calmed creation's chaos. Without her, the air would burn and the waters would drown. She was the breath that steadied the world. Egyptians believed that the universe was born not in violence, but in harmony, a joining of opposites. Tefnut was that harmony made flesh. Through her, the first order was established, the cycle of air and water, the balance between dryness and life. And from her union with Shu came to more children, Nut, the sky, and Geb. The earth thus began the eternal dance between heaven and soil, rain and seed, light and darkness. Nut, the daughter of air and mist, stretched endlessly above the world. Her body was the arching vault of heaven, her skin jeweled with stars. Every night she swallowed the setting sun, and every morning she gave birth to it again, a divine mother giving life to light itself. Beneath her lay Geb, the earth, green and fertile, yearning for her touch. The two were lovers, locked in an eternal embrace. But their closeness smothered creation, for nothing could grow between them. Ra, the mighty sun god, commanded Shu to separate them, to lift Nut high into the heavens and press Geb below. And so the world was formed, not through destruction, but through the sorrow of separation. Nut wept as she was lifted from her beloved. Her tears fell as rain upon the earth, and where they touched, life sprang forth, rivers, trees, and the heartbeat of mankind. Her sorrow became fertility. Her distance became beauty. And though she could no longer hold Geb in her arms, each dawn she stretched her light across him, a tender reminder of their love. It was said that when Nut arches across the sky, she is still reaching for him. And when lightning flashes across the horizon, it is Geb answering her from below, from the longing between. Nut and Geb came 5 divine children, each destined to shape the fate of Egypt. Osiris, the green god of life and renewal. Isis, the mother of magic and devotion. Set, the lord of storms and chaos. Nephthys, the guardian of night and morning. And Horus the elder, the sky falcon, who would one day rule the heavens. Their births were forbidden, for Ra had decreed that Nut should bear no children during the year. But the wise god Thoth pitied her. He gambled with the moon for extra light and won 5 new days, days outside the calendar, sacred days of birth. And on those stolen days, the children of Nut entered the world. From that moment, divine womanhood took form, not just in sky and water, but in purpose, motherhood, healing, protection, and wisdom. Nut had given Egypt her gods, but more than that, she had given it balance. Through her, life was eternal. The sun would die each night in her body, and each dawn she would birth it anew. She was the first mother, the first sky, the first promise that nothing truly ends to the ancient Egyptians. Nut was not distant. She was the great protector. They painted her across tomb ceilings, her arms and legs stretching across the heavens, her body filled with stars. To sleep beneath her was to rest within her womb. To die beneath her was to be reborn among her stars. When a soul left the body, the priests would whisper, "Nut, spread your wings over this one, that they may rise with the morning sun." Her love was not fierce, not loud. It was the kind that held the world together without asking for thanks. And so, in every mother who holds her child, in every dawn that returns after night, Nut lives still through her. Egypt learned that creation is not a single act, but a cycle, an eternal weaving of life, death, and rebirth. Her daughters and granddaughters would carry that truth into every form, some through love asterisk, some through rage, some through the silence of tombs. But all would carry her essence, the strength to create, destroy, and begin again. As Nut watched from the heavens, her mother Tefnut continued her eternal duty, the balance of the elements. When Egypt's air grew to dry, her breath brought the mists of dawn. When floods rose too high, her warmth returned them to the sky. She was the invisible goddess, rarely named, but always present. One myth tells that when the world grew arrogant and men forgot the gods, Tefnut left Egypt and wandered to distant lands, taking moisture with her. The world cracked under drought. The fields turned to dust. Ra sent Shu to find her, but she refused to return. Only when Ra himself wept did she finally come home, carried on the wind, her anger cooled by compassion. As she stepped onto Egyptian soil again, the Nile rose, and the land was healed. Her return was celebrated for generations, the festival of the distant goddess. It reminded Egypt that even the kindest hearts can grow weary, and even balance must sometimes break before it can be restored. From Tefnut's breath and Nut's body came every goddess who would follow. Each carried a fragment of their essence, the balance, the love, the endurance. Isis would take their wisdom and turn it into magic. Hathor would carry their beauty into music and joy. Sekhmet would inherit their fire, their power to destroy, so that life could be renewed. And Nephthys, their shadowed descendant, would learn the sacred art of mourning, not as sorrow, but as transformation. Egypt's people knew that the gods ruled not from distance, but from within the world itself. The Nile was the veins of the goddess. The stars were her eyes. The wind that brushed one's face at night was the breath of Tefnut returning home. To live was to walk within their embrace, and to die was simply to step back into their arms. And so the temples of Egypt were not built to command the gods, but to remember them, to whisper gratitude into the stone. In the temple of Den, priests sang to Nut, "O great Mother of the sky, spread yourself above me, that I may be safe in your shade." And in the silence of every night, they believed she listened. As night descends over the desert, the heavens shimmer like a veil of silver. Those who walk the sands look upward and see the body of Nut stretched across the stars. Every spark of light is a soul she has caught and lifted into eternity. Every breeze that touches the face of the weary is Tefnut's gentle sigh, bringing peace once more to the parched earth. The Egyptians saw no difference between life and death, between God and human, between sky and soul. All were woven together in the endless story of rebirth, the story that began with two divine women, Tefnut, who brought balance to chaos, and Nut, who gave birth to the light itself. Their legacy was not written in scrolls or carved in gold. It was carried by wind and water, passed through mothers to children, through prayer to star, through silence to dream. Even now, when you gaze at the night sky, you are looking into the face of Nut, and when you feel the morning mist upon your skin, you are touched by Tefnut's breath. Together, they remain the first and eternal goddesses, the quiet creators of everything that is, was, and will ever be. There are stories the world tells again and again, stories of gods and kings, of love and death, of the eternal battle between light and shadow. But among them all, few have lasted as long or reached as deep as the story of Isis, the mother of magic. For hers is not only a tale of devotion, it is the blueprint of life and death, of loss and resurrection, of a love so great that even the underworld could not contain it. To the people of ancient Egypt, Isis was more than a goddess. She was the goddess, the mother of kings, the voice of compassion, the protector of all who grieved. Her image was carved upon every temple wall, her name whispered over every cradle and tomb. She was the one who understood, the one who wept with you, who guided you, who taught that every sorrow could be turned into strength. But her story begins long before temples and prayers. It begins in the age when gods still walked the earth, when Egypt was still wild, and the Nile had just learned to flow, long before mortal kings carved their names upon stone. The gods ruled a world, both seen and unseen. Osiris, wise and just, became the ruler of Egypt. He brought order to the chaos, taught people to sow the land, to shape wood and stone, to honor the balance of mat. By his side stood Isis, his sister, his queen, his equal. She was beauty and wisdom, her words flowing like sacred spells. When she spoke, even the lotus turned its face toward her. When she smiled, the Nile seemed to shimmer brighter. Together, they built a golden age. The fields of the delta yielded harvests beyond measure, and the people rejoiced beneath the gaze of their divine rulers. The world was balanced, heaven, earth, and underworld aligned like stars. But in every age of light, a shadow stirs. Set, the brother of Osiris, watched in silence as the world praised his sibling. He was the storm that despised calm waters, the desert wind that envied the Nile. His heart festered with jealousy, until it became a flame that no god could quench. Set plotted in secret, weaving deceit with a cunning only chaos could love. He crafted a chest, a masterpiece of cedar and gold, shaped exactly to fit the body of Osiris. And one night, at a great feast, he brought it forth before the gods and men, proclaiming, "Whosoever lies within this chest shall keep it as their own forever." Laughter filled the hall as the gods, one by one, tried to fit themselves into the coffin. None could, until Osiris, with gentle amusement, stepped forward and lay inside. The chest embraced him perfectly. Before the laughter faded, Set and his followers slammed down the lid, sealed it with molten lead, and hurled it into the Nile. The river carried it away, bearing the life of Egypt's king into the darkness. Isis's cry pierced the heavens. It was said the stars dimmed for 7 nights, and the Nile wept in flood. But grief could not break her. She vowed to find him for love. She would walk every shore, face every storm, and speak to every wind. So began her wandering. Isis, veiled in sorrow, crossed deserts and red marshes, seeking the chest that held her beloved. She asked the people of every village, the birds that flew over the river, the spirits that whispered in the breeze. Even the children of the Nile, the crocodiles and fish, carried her message through the waters. At last, she found it carried by the current to the shores of Byblus, far beyond Egypt's borders. There it had lodged within the trunk of a great tree, and the tree had grown around it, enfolding Osiris within its heart. The king of Byblus, seeing the beauty of the tree, had it cut and fashioned into a pillar for his palace. But Isis, disguised as a mortal woman, entered the court as a servant. Her tears never ceased, yet her purpose remained bright as a torch. The queen, moved by the woman's sorrow, welcomed her, and in time, Isis revealed herself, divine and radiant. She broke the pillar open and freed the chest, weeping as she embraced it once more. With sacred words, she carried Osiris back to Egypt. On the island of Abydos, beneath the moonlight, she opened the chest, and there lay the silent form of the god she loved. She sang over him ancient hymns that called the stars to listen. Her sister Nephthys came, guided by grief and love. Together they wrapped the body with linen and oils, anointing it with the perfume of myrrh and the breath of eternity. But Set, still consumed by fury, found what Isis had done. He tore open the tomb and, in his madness, cut the body of Osiris into 14 pieces, scattering them across Egypt. so that no love could find him again. Isis did not despair. Her resolve grew stronger than any god's wrath. She traveled once more through fields and deserts, through temples and mountains, gathering each sacred piece. Every village that held a part of Osiris became holy, and temples were built there in his honor. Piece by piece, she restored her husband's form, all except one, the final piece, lost to the Nile's depths, swallowed by the fish. Yet, even then, Isis did not surrender. She shaped a sacred image in its place, completing the god's body through divine art. Then, beneath the stars, she spoke words of resurrection, ancient, secret, powerful. The air shimmered, the earth held its breath, and Osiris stirred. Life returned to him, not as it was before, but eternal. He rose as the Lord of the dead, ruler of the Duat, guardian of the souls. Through her love, death itself had been defeated. From that union, brief and sacred, Isis conceived a child, Horus, the falcon-eyed heir of the heavens, fearing Set's vengeance. Isis fled to the marshes of the Nile Delta. There, hidden among papyrus reeds, she gave birth in silence. The gods watched over her. Thoth sent his wisdom, and serpents guarded the child from harm. Day after day, she nourished Horus, whispering to him the names of the stars, the secrets of protection, and the stories of his father's greatness. In the soft hum of the river, the infant god grew, but Set's shadow loomed even there. He sent scorpions and beasts to strike the child. Each time, Isis's magic shielded him. Her words were light and fire. She called upon heaven and earth, upon her love for Osiris, upon Mat's balance, and no darkness could touch them. As Horus grew into youth, the time of reckoning came. He faced Set, the uncle who had slain his father, upon the battlefield of the gods. Their struggle shook the heavens. The sky darkened, storms raged, and the Nile rose high with fury. For 80 years, they battled, sometimes as men, sometimes as beasts, sometimes as falcons, streaking across the dawn. Each wound Horus suffered, Isis healed with her tears and magic. But even she faced torment. In one moment of compassion, she spared Set's life, and Horus, in anger, struck at his mother. Yet she forgave him, for she saw in him not anger, but the burning of justice, unfinished. At last, before the tribunal of the gods, Horus stood victorious. Set was banished to the desert, where the winds would howl his name forever. Horus took his father's throne, and Isis crowned him with her own hands. The white and red crowns of Upper and Lower Egypt united again. Peace returned, as the land breathed once more beneath the gaze of the gods. When the wars of gods had faded and the temples grew quiet, Isis remained serene, eternal, radiant. She watched over Egypt, guiding kings and midwives alike. She taught magic to those pure of heart, whispering her wisdom in dreams. Her name crossed borders, carried by traders and pilgrims, until her worship reached Greece, Rome, and beyond. To sailors, she became the star that guided them home. To mothers, she was comfort in childbirth and sorrow. To lovers, she was faith that defies death itself. Temples rose in her name, from Philae to Pompeii. Her image carved upon marble and painted on papyrus. In every land, she was known by many names as Isis, but her spirit remained one, the eternal mother who healed, who mourned, who brought the dead to life, and the living to peace. Even when the old gods fell silent, her memory endured. Her symbol, the throne upon her head, the ankh in her hand, became a mark of the sacred feminine, of power born not of conquest, but of love. And still today, when the Nile glows under the moon, and the reeds whisper in the wind, her story returns, soft as a dream, strong as the tide of time, because Isis was more than a goddess. She was the pulse of creation, the voice of devotion, and the promise that no darkness, however deep, could silence love everlasting. The Nile had settled again. Its waters, once heavy with grief, now shimmered in peace beneath the unblinking sun. Isis had restored balance. Horus had taken his father's throne, and for a time the world rested in harmony. But even in peace, the gods continued to shape the rhythm of the earth, and from the golden breath of that peace arose another radiance, softer yet just as eternal. Her name was Hathor. To the Egyptians, she was more than a goddess. She was the feeling of life itself, the warmth of the sun on the skin, the laughter of children, the music that echoed across the fields during harvest. All these belonged to her, where Isis was the mother of magic and protection. Hathor was the mother of joy and beauty, the golden heart of the heavens. She was called Mistress of the West, for she welcomed the souls of the dead. Lady of Turquoise, for her color adorned the mines of Sinai. Lady of the Sycamore Tree, for her shade brought peace to travelers and kings alike. But above all, she was known as the Golden One, the beloved daughter of Ra, the living sun. Long ago, when Ra looked upon his creation, he saw that the world was vast and full of sound, but cold. The mortals had learned to work and pray, but they did not yet know laughter. Their days passed like shadows, their hearts bound to the soil and the sun. So Ra, in his wisdom, looked into the depths of his own being, into that sacred spark from which the gods were born. And from his very eye, from the tear that fell as he gazed upon the world, came forth Hathor, radiant and gentle. She was light made tender. Her voice carried the warmth of sunrise. Her hair shimmered like the golden sand at dusk. When she laughed, the air itself seemed to breathe with her. And when she looked upon creation, Ra saw for the first time what it meant to love what one had made. The world bloomed under her gaze. The barren fields grew lush again. Lotus flowers rose from the Nile, and the hearts of men lifted in song. They began to dance, something no god had ever commanded them to do. And Ra, smiling, said, "My daughter brings not order nor law, but peace of spirit. Let her be known as Hathor, the house of Horus, for within her lies the dwelling of joy." From that day, Hathor's name was spoken with sweetness. She moved among the people unseen, blessing them in small, human ways, the smile between lovers, the moment of calm between storms, the taste of fruit under the hot sun. Her temples were places not of fear, but of music, where harps played, and the scent of incense mixed with laughter. And though she was divine, she felt close, a goddess who understood the heart's quiet joys and sorrows alike. They said Hathor danced before creation itself, her steps shaping the rhythm of life. And as she danced, the heavens curved in harmony, stars aligning to her graceful motion. From her came the arts of music and beauty, for she believed that to create was to worship. In her temples, women adorned themselves, not out of vanity, but devotion, for to mirror beauty was to honor the goddess who gave it to the farmers of the Nile. She was the giver of fertility. To the midwives, she was the unseen hand that guided the first breath of every child. Mothers whispered her name in the dark, asking for their children's dreams to be sweet, and in every home where love dwelt, a small offering, a flower, a piece of bread, a cup of milk would be left at dawn, that Hathor's favor might stay with them another day. Her great temple stood at Dendera, where the Nile curved in gentle grace. Its ceilings were painted with stars and constellations, the goddess herself etched among them, arms open to the sky. Every year, during the New Year's festival, her statue was carried from Dendora down the river to Edfu to meet her beloved Horus in celebration. The people would line the banks, singing and dancing, their joy echoing through the night like an unbroken prayer. It was said that the Nile flowed faster in those days, as if the river itself joined in her laughter. But Hathor's gifts were not merely mortal. Among the gods, she was the healer of hearts. When Ra grew weary with the burdens of kingship, she would come to him, playing her sistrum, the sacred rattle, whose sound cleared sorrow from the soul. Even the mightiest of gods bowed their heads when she played, for her music touched what no spell could reach, the quiet space within the divine heart where peace was born. She was love without demand, compassion without weakness, beauty without vanity, and through her, mortals came to understand that joy was not the absence of pain, but the choice to shine despite it. Yet, as with all who carry light, there came a day when the shadow within her would awaken, a day when joy would be tested by fury. Time moved on, and mortals, those fragile creatures of clay and spirit, began to forget. They forgot the gratitude owed to Ra, who raised the sun each morning. They forgot the harmony that Isis and Horus had restored. Pride grew like weeds among them, and whispers rose that perhaps the gods no longer ruled the earth. Ra watched this rebellion unfold, and his heart grew heavy. He had given light, and the world had turned away. In his sorrow, he summoned the gods to council. They gathered in the hall of heaven, where the stars burned brighter than any torch. "My children," Ra said, "the mortals have conspired against me. Their tongues mock the hand that feeds them. Their hearts no longer tremble before the sacred. Tell me, what shall be done?" Thoth, the wise scribe, spoke of mercy. Shu and Tefnut spoke of patience. But others, led by the fierce Set, whispered that rebellion must be met with blood. Ra listened, his ancient eyes darkened by hurt. "I will send my eye upon the earth," he said, and with that, he called forth Hathor, his gentle daughter, his light. When she appeared radiant and calm, Ra's sorrow turned to power. "My beloved," he said, "you are my eye. Go and see what mankind has become. If they are wicked beyond forgiveness, let your wrath fall upon them. Let them learn the cost of betrayal." But the fire in his words kindled something deep within her, something ancient, primal, born of the sun itself. The laughter of Hathor stilled, and in its place came the low growl of Sekhmet. Her eyes burned gold and crimson. Her hair turned the color of flame. She rose like a storm, given flesh, the lioness of vengeance, the fury of Ra unleashed. She descended upon the earth like a drought. Villages burned, rivers reddened, and the cries of mortals echoed through the sands. Sekhmet's claws tore through armies. Her breath was fire. Each drop of blood that fell fed her hunger for more. And as she raged, Ra watched from the heavens, his pride turning to regret. He saw the beauty he had made become terror. For in his anger, he had forgotten, the eye of Ra does not see without love, and where love is lost, sight becomes blindness. For days and nights without end, Sekhmet roamed, hunting all who defied the gods. The Nile shrank back in fear. Even the other deities hid their faces from her. The world that had once sung to Hathor now trembled under her shadow. At last, Ra, in his mercy, sought to end it. But how do you stop the fire when it is made from your own light? Thoth, the god of wisdom, knelt before Ra. There is but one way, he said. We cannot fight her, for she is your eye, but perhaps we can deceive her thirst. So Ra agreed. He commanded that 7,000 jars of beer be mixed with the red ochre of the desert, so that it resembled blood. When the moon rose, they poured the mixture over the sands where Sekhmet would pass. When the lioness came upon it, she saw the reflection of her own fury in the crimson pools. Thinking it the blood of her enemies, she drank deeply. She drank until the ground itself seemed to sway, until her roars softened into sighs. And as the sun rose, the fire in her eyes dimmed. Her form shimmered, and the lioness became once more the gentle Hathor. When she awoke, she looked around at the quiet world. The fields were broken, the villages empty, but the air was cool again. Ra looked upon her and wept. My daughter, he said, your wrath has burned away the darkness, but your love will heal what remains. Let the world learn that joy and fury are two halves of one truth. And so Hathor's festivals were born, not merely to celebrate her joy, but to remember the day love returned from the edge of destruction. At each festival, the people would drink red wine or beer dyed with ochre, laughing and dancing, as if to honor the moment the world was spared. Their joy was sacred, their laughter a prayer that the lioness would never wake again in that laughter. The goddess found her peace. She remembered who she had been, the light that healed, not the flame that consumed. From then on, she became the guardian of love renewed, not a naive joy, but one that had known sorrow and survived it. The people of Egypt loved her more deeply than ever, for they understood that even the gods carry both light and shadow, and that the greatest power is not destruction, but the will to forgive. Centuries passed, dynasties rose and fell, yet the temples of Hathor never fell silent. Pilgrims came from across the desert to offer flowers, mirrors, and music at her altars. They came not in fear, but in affection, for they saw in her the reflection of their own hearts. She was the mother who danced, the lover who healed, the lioness who guarded. In her, they saw the truth of all creation, that life must burn and bloom. Both at Dendera, her temple ceiling still told the story. Hathor's face radiant with the sun, her body covered in stars, her hands outstretched to lift the world. And when the priests sang her hymns, their words flowed like the Nile itself. O Hathor, golden one, lady of the heavenly dance, you lift the weary with your laughter. You crown the living with your love, and in your eyes the dawn is born again. In every age, she was reborn as goddess, muse, saint, or mother. Wherever the sun touched, she lived. Her laughter became the echo of creation's heartbeat. Her tears became rain. Her love, the unbroken rhythm that connects gods to mortals and mortals to each other. And thus, Egypt remembered her not just as the goddess of joy, but as the golden balance of existence. She was the calm after storm, the forgiveness after fury, the music after silence. Through Hathor, the people learned that to be divine was to feel, and to feel deeply, because every heart, whether of god or man, holds both Hathor and Sekhmet, the joy that builds and the fire that protects it. And in that eternal dance between love and wrath, Egypt found its soul. The Nile glimmers beneath a pale dawn. The golden calm that followed Hathor's laughter still rests upon the valley. Yet somewhere in the hush of reeds, the desert wind stirs again. For in Egypt, every joy casts a shadow, and every peace requires a guardian. The sun will not rise without its sentinels. They are called the eyes of Ratha, watchful fires of the heavens, born from the very sight of the sun god. When Ra looks upon creation, his gaze is not gentle alone. It sees truth, it burns deceit, it searches the corners where chaos hides. His eyes travel the earth as living powers, a goddess, each an aspect of his will. Some came as lionesses whose breath scorched the sand, some as serpents coiled upon the crowns of kings, some as gentle winds that whispered law into the hearts of mortals. Together they are one vision, the eternal vigilance that holds the cosmos. Upright, long before men carved temples or wrote prayers, Ra's eyes roamed freely through the dark sky. They were not yet named. They were flame and sight, order and wrath. From their motion came the rhythm of day and night, the opening and closing of heaven's lids. When the dawn widened, the eyes opened. When dusk fell, they closed in weary mercy, allowing stars to breathe again. But the gods soon learned that even light must rest, and that rest invites danger. For beyond the circle of the Nile lay the endless desert where Isfit, the spirit of chaos, crawled and hissed. Each night it reached toward the sleeping world, trying to swallow the path of the sun. And so Ra, growing wise with age, set his eyes upon the earth, not merely as symbols, but as guardians, divine watchers, whose gaze never dims. They became many: Sekhmet, the lioness, blazing with justice; Wadjet, the cobra, coiled around the crown; Mat, the feather, invisible yet weightier than stone. Each watched a different realm, one over war, one over kings, one over hearts. The people of Egypt believed that when the world faltered, when lies multiplied, when hearts grew cruel, the eyes would open wider, shining through drought and storm to remind creation who ruled its breath. Even pharaohs trembled at that thought, for the gaze of Ra sees all crowns as equal dust, and yet, within that divine surveillance, lay comfort. The farmer who tilled his land under the open sun whispered thanks, for he worked beneath the same eyes that once kindled life itself. Mothers lifted newborns toward the light, asking that the eyes look kindly upon them. The dead, wrapped and hidden, were still carried beneath that same gaze into eternity. Nothing in Egypt escaped the warm Thor, the warning of Ra's sight. So begins this chapter of flame and justice, of serpents and truth. The laughter of Hathor fades, replaced by the steady heartbeat of vigilance. For even joy, to endure, must be guarded. When humankind first felt fear, it had the shape of a lioness walking through dusk. Sekhmet, She who is powerful was the fiercest of all the eyes. Born from the crimson glare of Ra's wrath, she strode into existence when the world turned ungrateful. In the days after the first age of plenty, mortals grew proud. They mocked the gods, neglected their offerings, and whispered that the sun was old. Their laughter climbed toward heaven, and Ra, weary and betrayed, let his fury take form. He plucked a single spark from his own eye and hurled it into the sands. The spark struck the desert and became a lioness of pure flame. Her mane blazed with sunlight. Her roar scattered the dunes like seeds. Sekhmet opened her eyes, and Egypt knew terror. She descended upon mankind as vengeance made flesh. Villages turned red beneath her paws. Rivers ran dark with the reflection of her fury. No sword could wound her, for she was not of flesh, but of sunlight, shaped by purpose. Wherever she walked, the scent of heat and copper followed. Ra's anger, once abstract, had found its teeth. For days she raged, and even the gods grew silent. Yet, as she hunted, a strange thing happened. Ra himself began to mourn the cries of his children. His anger cooled, replaced by regret. But Sekhmet did not stop. She was the pure momentum of wrath, unstoppable until the last drop of rebellion was gone. So Ra sought counsel among the gods, and Thoth, the clever one, devised a trick. They mixed beer with red ochre and pomegranate juice, until it gleamed like blood beneath the sun. The liquid filled 7,000 jars, and was poured upon the sand where Sekhmet prowled. When the lioness came upon the pools, she thought them the blood of her prey, and drank deeply. The drink dulled her rage. Her growl softened to a purr. By dawn she slept, and when she awoke, she was calm, once more transformed back into Hathor, the gentle one. But the memory of her power never left the world. Temples rose to honor and to pacify her. Each morning, priests would chant her names, hundreds of them, to soothe her temper and invite her healing instead of her wrath. For Sekhmet was not only destroyer, she was healer too. The same fire that burned could cauterize wounds. The same sun that scorched could cleanse. In her hands, death and cure were twins to the Egyptians. She became the guardian of balance, the reminder that peace without vigilance invites decay. She watched over pharaohs in battle, her image carved on amulets worn across their chests. Warriors prayed not for victory, but for restraint, that Sekhmet's fury might spare them once her work was done. In the desert's silence, her shadow lingers still. The wind that bites the traveler's skin carries her breath. The mirage trembling over hot stone is her mirth. When the sun bleeds into the horizon each evening, some say it is Sekhmet licking her claws. Sated at last, she remains the eternal eye that never closes, the roaring conscience of the sun. When the midday sun stood highest over Egypt, another eye watched from the horizon, glittering curve of bronze and flame. Her name was Wadjet, the protector of the north, the goddess whose form was a rearing cobra. She was the spark that hissed at the edge of Ra's vision, the flash of warning before fire strikes. From the burning eye of the sun she was born, sliding from its golden tier. Ra's rage had cooled since the days of Sekhmet, yet the world still needed defense. So he shaped this serpent of vigilance, and set her upon the brow of every king. Her image, the uraeus, curled on the pharaoh's crown. It was not mere decoration, but a living spell. For the Egyptians believed that Wadjet truly dwelled within that symbol, awake, alert, and ready to strike against any who dared threaten divine order. When Pharaoh stood before his people, sunlight shimmered upon the serpent's scales. The crowds bowed not only to their ruler, but to the goddess who crowned him. She was there warning that kingship itself was sacred, that the ruler's duty was not to rule, but to protect the balance of the world. Legends say that in ancient wars, when invaders crossed the delta's marshes, Wadjet rose as a wall of fire. Her body uncoiled across the sky, and her hiss split the clouds. Spears melted, banners burned, and the wind carried her fury back toward the sea. The soldiers who survived spoke of a serpent of sunlight hovering over Egypt's banners, her eyes twin suns. Yet, like all the eyes, Wadjet was more than wrath. In her temples, she was worshipped as the nurse of the divine child Horus, the serpent who watched over the cradle of kings. She guarded birth and rebirth alike, the first breath of infants and the last exhale of dying kings. Her shrines glowed with lamps fed by cedar oil. Women seeking protection for their homes offered small figures of bronze serpents, each polished until it shone like living scales. Priests recited hymns in the hush before dawn. Flame of Ra, turn away our enemies. Watcher of crowns, keep our hearts pure. Coil around our dreams, O Wadjet, that we may wake beneath thy gaze. Through her, the Egyptians saw that vigilance could be gentle, that a watchful eye need not always burn it, could simply be aware. Wadjet was the spark that warned without destroying, the awareness that kept the fragile balance of life intact. Even today, the cobra still curves over the brows of statues and relics, its tongue forever poised between mercy and strike. That is Wadjet's eternal posture, ready but restrained, the embodiment of wise power. And as Ra crossed the sky each day, she glided ahead of him, the herald of sunlight, the arrow of awakening. Where she looked, darkness trembled and withdrew. She was the path of the morning itself, beyond flame and fang, beyond the roar of lioness or hiss of serpent. There is a silence that governs all things. In that silence dwells Mat, the quietest and most necessary of Ra's eyes. She is not a goddess of battle, nor of passion, nor of birth. She is the principle upon which gods and mortals both depend. Her emblem is simpler, single, ostrich feather. Yet that feather outweighs worlds from the first dawn. Mat stood beside Ra in his solar bark as it sailed through the heavens. Each morning he rose because she existed. Each night he rested because she endured. Where Sekhmet burned and Wadjet struck, Mat merely was. Her power lay in presence, in the still certainty that order is sacred. The Egyptians believed that every breath they took added to or diminished Mat. A lie, however small, was a shadow against her feather. An act of kindness was its brightness restored. Even Pharaoh's decrees were bound by her name. Without Mat, no law could claim divinity, but it was in death that her mystery shone brightest. For every soul, whether peasant or king, faced her in the Hall of Two Truths. There, before Osiris and the assembled gods, the heart of the deceased was placed upon scales opposite her feather. No treasure, no title, no offering could sway the balance. If the heart was heavier than truth, weighted with greed, deceit, or cruelty, was devoured by Ammit, and the soul was lost. If it was lighter, the the soul entered the field of reeds, the paradise of eternal dawn. This ritual was more than judgment. It was philosophy embodied. To the Egyptians, life itself was a preparation for that weighing. To live in Mat was to live in harmony with the rhythm of the cosmos, to work honestly, to speak truthfully, to honor one's ancestors, to keep the waters clean and the fields tended. Priests of Mat wore white linen and carried her feather before the pharaoh when he judged disputes. Her image adorned temples not to inspire awe but reflection. Her silence was contagious. To stand before her statue was to feel one's heartbeat align with eternity. She was not wrath, and yet all wrath bowed to her. She was not mercy, yet every act of mercy imitated her. Even Ra himself looked upon her and found guidance, for the sun must rise at the right time and set at the right hour. If he lingered too long, the world would burn. If he left too soon, it would freeze. Thus, Mat was the rhythm of Ra's own breath, the balance that keeps light from madness through her. All other eyes of Ra found meaning. Sekhmet's fire burned to preserve Mat, not destroy it. Wadjet's vigilance watched so that Mat's harmony would endure, and Hathor's laughter filled the silence that Mat created. For joy, too, is part of balance, in the whispers of temple scribes and the songs of farmers. Her teaching passed through generations. Build with fairness, speak with measure, give when you can, harm none without cause. So shall your heart rest light upon the scales. And in that ancient wisdom lies Egypt's solar civilization, not merely of stone and sun, but of conscience shaped into ritual, of morality carved into time itself. The sky deepens toward dusk, the sunboat descends, and Ra prepares once more for his nightly journey through the underworld. Yet before his light fades, his eyes remain upon the world. Sekhmet, coiled in desert flame, watches over the restless. Wadjet, gliding between stars, guards the path of kings. Mat, serene and unshaken, balances the heart of the universe. They are not separate beings, but facets of a single divine gaze, the will to see, to judge, to protect, to sustain. Through them, the sun god never truly sleeps. Even in darkness, his awareness burns quietly, like embers, waiting for dawn. The people of Egypt knew this. They lit lamps in their homes at twilight and whispered prayers. Eyes of Ra, see us kindly. Eyes of Ra, guard our dreams. For to be seen by the gods was both fear and blessing. Fear that one's shadow might be exposed. Blessing that one was never forgotten. And so the cycle continued. Day by day, century by century, Ra opened and closed his eyes across the ages. Empires rose and crumbled beneath that gaze. But the balance endured. For as long as truth is honored, as long as light meets shadow, the eyes of Ra will remain. They are the world's eternal watchers, neither cruel nor kind, only awake. And when you feel the warmth of the morning sun upon your face, remember, you stand within their sight. The day grows old upon the Nile. The western horizon burns with amber and rose, and the river mirrors the dying fire of the sun. Birds fall silent in the reeds. The fishermen have moored their boats. Only the whisper of the current remains, carrying with it the weight of another completed cycle. To the people of ancient Egypt, this was not merely sunset. It was a sacred moment, a rehearsal of eternity. For every evening, the sun god Ra descended into the underworld, the Doat, sailing his golden bark through the caverns of shadow to battle the serpent of chaos and be reborn at dawn. This was the rhythm of all existence. The Egyptians looked upon the fading sun and saw their own destiny reflected, for, to them, death was not the end, but the continuation of this divine journey. Life was a day, death the night through which the soul must sail, and beyond the darkness waited the light of morning, the promise of rebirth. The west bank of the Nile became the land of the dead. There stood the pyramids and tombs, their shapes catching the last light before it vanished. Each tomb was a miniature universe, a map of the Duat drawn in stone. For the dead, like the sun, must find their way through 12 gates of shadow before rising anew. The living prepared carefully for that voyage. They built resting places, not of despair, but of guidance. They filled chambers with food, amulets, and songs written on papyrus verses, known as the Book of Coming Forth by Day. They were instructions for the soul, so that even in the deepest night it would remember the way home, and who would guide it on this long and perilous road. Not the wrathful gods of the sun, not the fierce eyes of Ra, but gentler beings, guardians of silence and mercy. They were the keepers of death and rebirth, those who stood at the threshold between the seen and the unseen. Among them was the quiet sister, Nephthys, and her shadow-born son, Anubis, and together they watched over every soul that crossed from breath into memory in the myths of Egypt. Light and shadow are never enemies. They are twins, born of the same source, forever intertwined. And so it was with Isis and Nephthys, the sisters of twilight and midnight. Isis shone like the full moon, radiant in her magic and compassion. Nephthys, her counterpart, was the dusk itself, soft, dim, sorrowful, but no less holy. She was called Nephthys, Lady of the House, for she dwelled on the edge of the known world, the house where light fades, the place where souls rest before the dawn. When Osiris was slain and his body scattered by Set, it was Nephthys who searched beside Isis. Together they walked the riverbanks and deserts, following the whispers of the wind. Where Isis wept, Nephthys sang in a low, haunting voice, her song weaving through the reeds like mist. When at last they found the fragments of Osiris, Nephthys helped bind him back together, her hands gentle and sure. In that act, she became the first mourner, the first comforter of grief. It is said that when a person dies, Nephthys stands behind their body, unseen but present, her hands upon their shoulders, guiding their spirit from the noise of the world into the hush beyond. Her voice, though seldom heard by the living, is the lullaby of the afterlife. Temples of Nephthys stood not in the heart of cities, but at their edges, near the necropolises, where sand met stone and silence reigned. Priests and priestesses, dedicated to her wore linen dyed the color of twilight. They tended to the tombs, keeping lamps burning for those who had passed. Their hymns were quiet things, filled not with pleas for miracles, but with gratitude for rest. The Egyptians believed that to die without Nephthys's blessing was to wander lost, and so, at every funeral rite, her name was invoked beside that of Isis. As Isis called the spirit to rise, Nephthys opened the door of the western horizon. Her love was not passionate or bright like her sister's. It was steady, humble, and enduring. She was the guardian of transitions, the keeper of that single heartbeat between the last breath and the first step into eternity. In some hymns, she is described as the night wind that cools the brow of the dying, the shade that comforts the traveler in the desert. In others, she is the mother of the jackal-headed god, a being who learned from her the art of silent protection. And so, through her, the mystery of mercy entered the world of the dead in the stillness of the tomb. Beneath flickering lamplight and the scent of myrrh, another figure watches. His skin is black as obsidian, his eyes glimmer like distant stars. The head of a jackal rises above his shoulders, not in menace, but in solemn grace. He is Anubis, guardian of the necropolis, the one who opens the way. Born of Nephthys and conceived in secrecy, Anubis grew not among the living, but among the thresholds of night. He learned to walk where the desert meets the stars, to listen to the stillness where mortal words cannot reach. From Ra he received his purpose, to protect the bodies of the dead, to preserve the link between flesh and spirit, and to guide each soul through the shadows of the duet to the Egyptians. He was not the god of death, but the god of transition. When a person died, it was Anubis who arrived first, not as terror, but as presence. He knelt beside the body, touching the lips with the ankh of breath, ensuring that the spirit might speak again when called upon. Then he presided over the embalming, his priests wrapping the body with sacred linen, each layer sealed with a prayer. Every knot was tied with precision. Every bandage carried words of power. They worked not to defy death, but to prepare for eternity. For to decay was to forget. To preserve was to remember. When the mummification was complete, the journey began. In the duat, Anubis stood beside the scales. On one side rested the heart of the deceased, on the other, the feather of Mat. His eyes never blinked. He watched the balance with infinite care. If the heart trembled with guilt, it grew heavy. If it was pure, it floated light as dawn. But Anubis did not judge. That was Osiris's domain. He simply kept the measure true, ensuring that no deceit could tilt the scale. And should a soul falter in fear, Anubis would whisper softly, "Be still. The truth will carry you." Thus, he became a symbol not of doom, but of comfort. He was the first companion of the soul, the unseen guide who walks beside every traveler in the night. For the Egyptians, to die under his care was a blessing. His image was painted upon tomb walls and amulets, his likeness carved into black stone, his name invoked in funerary hymns. O Anubis, who art upon thy mountain, who watchest over the dead, guide us safely through the darkness, and bring us to the field of reeds. He was called Imiat, he who is in the place of embalming, and also Kentiamenchu, the first of the Westerners, for he waits where the sun sets, where all souls must eventually go. And though centuries have passed, the image of the jackal still endures, a guardian not of terror, but of peace. Beneath the earth, beneath the stars, the sun boat enters the duat. It sails through 12 gates, each representing an hour of the night. At every gate, spirits stand watch, some radiant, some monstrous. They test the courage of the soul, for only those who know their own name and truth may pass unscathed. The duat is not a place of torment, but of revelation. It mirrors the soul itself, its hopes, its fears, its forgotten memories. Here the traveler must face what he carried in life. Each lie becomes a serpent, each kindness a torch that lights the way in the first hours. The soul crosses rivers of flame, guided by the chants of Anubis. In the middle hours, it enters fields of stars, where spirits of light float like lilies on cosmic waters. There, the soul remembers its origins, that it too was once made of the sun's spark. Then comes the final gate, the Hall of Two Truths. Here stand 42 judges, each representing a principle of Mat. The soul must declare its innocence before them. I have not stolen. I have not lied. I have not caused pain. One by one, the confessions are spoken, and one by one, the judges nod in silence. Then the heart is weighed. Anubis steadies the scales. Thoth records the result in his scroll. If the heart balances the feather, Osiris smiles. The soul is reborn into the field of reeds, a mirror of earthly life, but perfect and eternal. The crops never fail. The river never floods too high. The loved ones who passed before wait in golden light. But if the heart proves heavy, Ammit, the devourer, waits. Part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, she consumes the unworthy soul, and it ceases to exist. No punishment, no fire, no scream, only silence. The ultimate forgetting. Yet even that silence was not seen as cruelty, but as justice, the balance maintained, the harmony of the universe preserved. Thus did the Egyptians live their lives with a reverence born of eternity. They did not fear death. They prepared for it. They built their tombs as maps, their prayers as compasses, their hearts as offerings to truth. Far above the duat, the horizon begins to glow. The journey is complete. Ra's bark emerges from the eastern gate, pulling behind it the light of morning. The sun rises once more, and with it, all of life. The souls who walked beside him are renewed, their hearts purified by the long night. They join the chorus of stars, singing softly to the newborn day. In Egypt, the people awaken. Farmers step into their fields. Priests open the doors of temples. Children chase shadows on the walls. They do not see the sun's struggle, but they feel its triumph. And in their hearts, they know as Ra returns, so will they, in their own time, in their own dawn. The tombs on the west bank glow faintly with the first rays. Within them, the names of the dead are spoken aloud, for to speak a name is to make it live again. Offerings are placed, prayers are whispered, and the scent of incense rises into the brightening air. Death, to the Egyptians, was never an end. It was a bridge, a sacred curve in the river of existence. Nephthys watched the crossing. Anubis guided the path, and Mat waited on the far shore, her feather gleaming in the new light. In this belief, Egypt built its immortality. Its kings and commoners alike lived with eyes turned toward eternity. They knew that every act of kindness was a brick in their eternal home, every truth spoken, a step on their return. And so, across 3,000 years, their words, their prayers, their stories still echo. Stone may crumble, temples may sink beneath the sands, but the faith that life endures beyond death remains unbroken. The sun rises, the Nile flows, the names are remembered, and somewhere, beneath that eternal horizon, the keepers of death and rebirth still walk their silent watch. guiding every soul that dares to cross from night into dawn. For in Egypt, nothing truly dies. It only changes form and waits patiently for the next sunrise. The night in Egypt is not dark. It is blue, deep, endless, alive. It breathes with a quiet pulse, a rhythm older than the pyramids, older than memory itself. The people who lived beside the Nile looked up at this living darkness and saw not emptiness, but a goddess. They called her Nut, the eternal sky, the great mother who swallowed the sun each evening and gave birth to it again every dawn. To them, the heavens were not a cold abyss. They were the body of love itself, arching over the world in infinite embrace. When the last light fades and the air grows cool, Nut unfolds across the horizon. Her skin glitters with 1,000 tiny fires, the souls of the departed, the dreams of gods, the lanterns of eternity. Every night, she stretches from east to west, her arms guarding the earth, her body curved like the vault of heaven. Beneath her lies her husband Geb, the god of the earth, green and fertile. Still yearning for her touch, they are forever apart, separated by Shu, the god of air, who holds them apart so that the world might exist between them. And yet, every evening, as the sun sinks, Nut bends low enough to kiss Geb upon the horizon, and from that kiss, the night is born. To sleep beneath the sky of Egypt was to lie in Nut's arms. The ancient people believed she watched over all things, from the birth of the first cry to the silence of the final breath in the sacred temples. Her image was painted across ceilings, a vast blue body speckled with gold, arching protectively above the world. Her face, serene and infinite, looked down upon the living and the dead alike. When a soul left its earthly form, it did not fall into darkness. It rose into her embrace. For Nut was both tomb and womb. She received the dead, and from her all were reborn. She was called She Who Holds 1,000 Souls. Each star upon her skin was a resting place, a light rekindled from a life once lived. And so the Egyptians would whisper their names to the sky, believing that Nut would catch the sound and weave it among her stars. To speak was to be remembered. To be remembered was to shine forever, night after night. She gathered these voices, kings, farmers, children, queens, and lifted them beyond forgetting. Even the gods were her children. From her came Osiris, Isis, Set, Nephthys, and Horus the Elder. Each carried a fragment of her infinite self, a reflection of her eternal balance. Isis, the love that binds. Set, the force that challenges. Osiris, the life that endures through death. Nephthys, the mercy of shadow. Horus, the rising light. All were born within her. All returned to her at the end of time. The Egyptians called the Milky Way the celestial Nile. They believed it was the reflection of their sacred river, flowing not through sand and reeds, but through stars and silence. In that upper river lived Hathor, the mistress of the West, the lady of joy and stars. If Nut was the vast sky, Hathor was its beating heart, the pulse of love and renewal that echoed through eternity. Hathor's image was gentle, a woman crowned with a sun disk, framed by the horns of a cow. But her power was immeasurable. She was the goddess of motherhood, of dance, of the sacred balance between pleasure and devotion. To the weary, she offered rest. To the mourning, she offered laughter. To the dead, she offered safe passage across the shining river of the sky. When a soul left the world, it was said that Hathor extended her hand from the western horizon, guiding it into the arms of Nut. Together, the two formed a divine current, the rhythm of descent and return, the endless tide of rebirth. There is a place in Dendera where time seems to stop. Its columns rise like stone palms, and the air hums faintly with a warmth that feels alive. This is the Temple of Hathor, built by human hands but shaped in her image, a sanctuary of joy, beauty, and peace. Even in silence, the walls speak. Carvings of stars and sun disks, of musicians and dancers, fill every corner with life. And high upon the ceiling, Nut arches again, her body spanning the entire sky of the temple. But at the center stands Hathor herself, the embodiment of all comfort. In the days of the pharaohs, pilgrims would travel for miles to stand before her statue, to whisper their sorrows, and to sleep upon the temple floor, believing their dreams would carry her voice, and they did. They said she spoke in music, not in words, but in harmonies that the soul alone could hear, like the rippling of light across water. She was the goddess of both ecstasy and serenity, the sweetness of wine, the rhythm of drums, the laughter that follows grief. When Ra's anger once filled the world, it was Hathor, in her fierce aspect as Sekhmet, who unleashed destruction. But when her rage was calmed, she became joy again, proving that even fury can be transformed into grace. Hathor was the promise that pain would one day soften, that even after the storm, there would be dance and beauty and light at night. The priests of Hathor sang hymns upon the temple roofs. Their voices drifted into the open sky, joining the faint shimmer of the Milky Way. They called it the Song of the Cow of Heaven, a hymn of gratitude for life and death alike. Hail to thee, O Golden One, who riseth in beauty over the horizon. Thou who bringest souls across the river of night, thou whose laughter is the light of the stars. These hymns were more than praise. They were lullabies for the cosmos, soothing, rhythmic, eternal. Each word echoed the heartbeat of creation, for the Egyptians believed that sound itself was sacred, that the universe began not with silence, but with a song. And through Hathor, that song never ceased. Every whisper of the wind, every rustle of the reeds, every cry of the ibis or coo of the dove, all were notes in her celestial music. And so, when a child was born, the midwives would sing softly, believing Hathor listened. When someone died, they sang again, for the goddess's melody was both cradle and requiem. Above the temples, the stars turned slowly. Thousands of years have passed, yet the same constellations still trace their patient dance. Orion, the soul of Osiris; Sirius, the light of Isis; and the long, shining curve of the Milky Way, the body of Nut and Hathor, joined in endless embrace. To lie beneath that sky was to remember that nothing is ever truly lost. Every soul, every moment, becomes part of that vast memory. The Egyptians believed that if you lived with truth, balance, and kindness, you would become a star after death. Your light would never fade. You would join Nut's body, shining forever in her endless night. Perhaps that is why they built monuments that reached for the heavens, not to defy time, but to touch her, to rest among her stars. Even now, When you stand before the pyramids of Giza at midnight, you feel her presence. The stones hum faintly with the cold of the night. The wind brushes against them like the breath of memory. Above, Nut glows softly, the same mother, the same sky. Unchanged, she does not forget. The myth says that at the end of all things, Nut will bend once more and touch the earth. The separation between sky and land will vanish, and all that ever lived will rise into her heart. The rivers will return to the stars, the mountains to the clouds, the souls to her endless arms. And in that moment, there will be no death, no distance, no sorrow, only the gentle curve of infinity, and the sound of her breathing through the night in dreams. The Egyptians called this the Great Return, not an end, but a beginning that repeats forever. The sun is born, the sun dies, the stars awaken, the stars sleep, and through it all, Nut and Hathor keep watch, mothers of all creation, queens of peace, somewhere far beyond the edge of sound. A soft light begins to bloom. The stars pale, one by one. The river mist rises. The air trembles with the hush of morning. Nut exhales, and from her lips the sun is born again. A glowing child, lifted from the darkness. Hathor greets him with a song, a melody older than the desert wind, and the world awakens once more. Farmers step into their fields. Priests light incense in the temples. Children laugh beside the water. The eternal rhythm continues. To the Egyptians, this dawn was proof that all things return, that no night lasts forever, that every end is only a hidden beginning. The cycle is complete. The sun, reborn from the body of Nut, will travel again across the sky, only to set once more into her waiting arms. So, as you listen now, beneath your own sky, know that you are part of that same rhythm. Every heartbeat, every breath is an echo of the ancient song of Nut and Hathor. Your life, your love, your dreams, they are threads woven into the great fabric of the night. And when you close your eyes, you do not fall into darkness. You rise into the arms of the sky. The same stars that watched over the pharaohs watch over you still. The same river of light flows above, carrying your story, your quiet, your peace. Let go now. The queens of the heavens are near. Their hands are cool, their voices soft. They whisper through the silver breath of night. All things return. All things are remembered. All things are one.